Hello, everyone. I hope you are doing great. I'm Thomas Bigagli, partner at Plug and Play Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I tend to throw that joke all the time that I'm always bringing the rain from Paris, where I come from. But actually, I was in GCC and flew overnight to come here, so it was not the case that time, I must say. Today, we will speak about a bunch of exciting things related to why and how corporates invest in startups and why you, as an entrepreneur, you should consider an investment ticket from them. Maybe to tell you a bit more about Plug and Play really in a nutshell, for the ones that do not know what we do, Plug and Play has been around since the 90s. We were originally a startup campus that hosted the early beginnings of startups that became tech giants, such as Google, PayPal, Logitech, Dropbox, etc. Then we professionalized our missions and grew over time. And right now, we are proud to say that we are the most active VC globally, but also the largest open innovation platform. You can see here that our expansion grew significantly from Silicon Valley all the way to Tokyo, Japan. We have more than 60 offices globally, and you can see here some key metrics. On the VC side of things, so you know Plug and Play has been an entrepreneur first. When we had this campus, the Lucky Building as we call it, our founder and CEO started investing in these entrepreneurs. So since the 90s, he has his own family office that has been investing in more than 1,500 startups, out of which we have 35 unicorns. The family office is mostly focusing on early stage companies, anywhere in the world, any industries. We are really opportunistic. Since 3 or 4 years, we started launching other funds, more generalistic or thematic, focusing on later stage companies, as you can see there on the slide. So on one side, we are a VC fund. On the other side, we are this large open innovation platform. But what does that mean? So the model of Plug and Play is how we can help the overall ecosystem and the value chain of innovation to thrive. And how we do that effectively, we work really closely with large corporations and governmental institutions to support them when it comes to anything related to innovation. And of course, generally, how to work with startups. So on one side, you can see that we've been supporting them from the strategy definition all the way to the scouting, POC management, even managing accelerator, like what we are doing here with Startup Lithuania. And last but not least, we also help them to invest in startups. And this is the best transition to the next part. So why Plug and Play, and not only us, decided to support large corporations to invest in startups? You can see here that every dollar a corporation spends on innovation comes double during the recession, while for a CVC it comes triple. Why so? Is because you have a financial investment, plus the innovation that you will bring to the company that will give you a competitive edge, and last but not least, the partnership value of it. Few numbers to set the stage. I don't know if you're aware of that, but more than 70% of Fortune 500 companies, this example is for the US, but you can see that globally, they are actually active when it comes to investing in startups. The second numbers I wanted to disclose with you is you are more than 2,000 corporate venture capital arm globally. And last but not least, in 10 years, you had almost 1,500 billion that has been invested by CVC, which is enormous. To illustrate that, here you can see the comparison. For the past 10 years, we don't have all of the stats for 2024, of course, but from 2013 all the way to 2023, the comparison between CVC's investment and VC's investment when it comes to capital deployment or how much they invested. And you can see that CVCs, they invest between, let's say, 1/3 and 2/3 of what the VCs are investing, which is enormous. You can see relatively the same trends for the number of deals as well that they make. Originally, CVCs were mostly focusing on later stage startups and leading rounds. Nowadays, it's no longer the case. They do everything, and I will tell you a bit more about it later on. So my question is, how large corporations invest in startups and what effectively are they seeking? So I don't know if you're aware of that, but 99% of startups post-Series A or from Series A received money from large corporations, directly or indirectly. Do you know what is directly or indirectly, maybe not yet, but we will cover that. And are you aware that 63% of the unicorns globally, they receive CVC money? So it means that at one round at least, one CVC has been investing in them. I did not mention large corporations, I mentioned corporate venture capital. And there is a distinction, and it comes here. So how large corporations, they invest in startup, generally speaking? They can do indirect investment. It means that they will rely on professional investors, like Plug and Play, for instance, to invest in their fund. So they become what we call the LP, a limited partners, right? And then depending on the fund they invest in, they can have different theses, right? It can be a generalistic fund. If that's the case, generally, they want to seek financial return. If they invest in a thematic fund linked to their core business, generally speaking, they will, of course, seek more strategic return. And they can also do direct investment. So how do they do direct investment? It depends. They can create their own corporate venture capital, like a fund, or they can invest from their balance sheet. 80% of the 2,000 plus companies that are active when it comes to investing in startups invest from their balance sheet, just so you know. So we think they are actual funds, well, they are not. They brand themselves as funds. But at the end, it's the same. They invest in startups. So what are the different CVC structure to illustrate a bit further what I just said? So on one side, you have the corporations that invest directly from their balance sheet, right? On the second side of things, you have funds that are solo LP/GP. So one company decides to create one fund for itself, and they invest and manage it themselves or rely, again, on a professional investor to do it. And last but not least, multi-LPs funds. So one fund pooling many different LPs, many different large corporations, etc., etc. These generally evolve over time. So less mature you are as a large corporation, more you start investing from your balance sheet. And, slowly but surely, as you professionalize it more, you generally start building your own fund. But it's not a prerequisite to invest in startup. To illustrate further what I just said, I wanted also to emphasize on the fact that all of the large corporations, they don't have one initiative when it comes to investing. They have many. And the example I wanted to highlight here is BNP Paribas, for instance, the French bank. So they invest from their balance sheet with one unit that is called BNP Paribas Development, that is investing in relatively early stage companies. Then they have found their own CVC, where they are the only LP, which is called Opera Tech Venture. And then there are also LPs, so investing in funds that they are not managing themselves, from many, many different VCs. I put Eurazeo here, but you have many. And what I wanted to tell you here is, I don't know if you realize that BNP alone has 37 investment initiatives for startups. 37, which is pretty enormous. So what you need to understand if you want to speak to a CVC is what is actually the positioning of that specific fund or initiative. So you can see here that you have a multi-dimensional approach. They can be really broad, covering the fourth spectrum, maybe two or maybe only one. On one side, you will have the strategic development and venture development axis, and on the other side, the ecosystem/business development. And you can see that more you go on the top left, I mean, for me at least, yeah, it's going to be the platform development, while on the right, more the corporate development as a whole. And if you go down, it's going to be more linked to a VC, like traditional VC, so seeking financial returns. And on the other side, it's going to be more, acculturation, access to trends, etc., etc. To illustrate that, you can see here some logos of big CVCs that are active in each category, right? So Salesforce Ventures is more on the top left axis, Verizon on the top right, etc., etc. But at least if you start speaking to CVCs, it's really important for you to understand where they position themselves. Because a financial CVC or a strategic CVC, they have totally different objectives. So why corporates invest in startup? You have many reasons. You have thousands of reasons. They range, again, from strategic to financial, and from one stage to another, of course, they vary. So you can see here that some are in the middle, like M&A opportunities. It's strategic, but it's also financial. You can see that at the early stage for the financial, earlier you invest, more risk you take, so of course, higher can be the outcome, etc., etc. I mean, we won't have time to cover all of these different points, but I just wanted to highlight here that the reasoning is definitely huge. Now on the startup side of things, so why startup should consider a potential investment from a CVC or an equivalent, or large corporation investing in them? What I can tell you is what is more strategic to a startup to receive money from its customer. There is no better credential than a happy customer that is willing to back you up, right? It's a big stamp for you that you should leverage. And you, thanks to that, you will also lock the collaboration with these large corporations over time. If we go to many other reasonings, I mean, the list is really long. I cannot even cover all of them now, but you can see that it can go from having access to the industry, the trends, the data, to having more validation and credibility, to scaling opportunities thanks to having access to the broader organization, etc., etc. But what you need to keep in mind is, as a startup, every time you raise is to finance a future milestone, right? And you raise to finance this milestone in 24 months, for instance, and you need to invest your cash wisely, but also to rely on the added value of your respective investors. So every time you raise a round, you have new investors, so new added value. So it's really important for you to pick wisely who will be part of your cap table. And not only angels and VCs are a good match. CVCs can be an extremely strategic decision from your side. And last but not least, what I wanted to finish on is you need to diversify, pick wisely, and smart money is gold. You can see all of the different stages and typically which type of investors that you will target. And if you go down the slide, you can see that CVCs are covering a large spectrum of it. Thank you. That was it. And feel free to add me or contact me if you want to learn more about CVCs.